The Raritan River is the longest river solely in New Jersey. It encompasses many of the same environmental challenges facing the rest of the state: pollution, disappearing wildlife habitat, sprawl, and overdevelopment.
All of these threats seem to be encompassed within a single issue: stormwater. A leading ecologist with Princeton Hydro, Mark Gallagher, shares his findings in this fall 2010 presentation, Wetlands Mitigation.
And what I'm going to talk about is restoration opportunities, and it's actually going to kind of overlap with the first two speakers, because we'll look at restoration in a pretty broad perspective. This is the definition used by the Society for Ecological Restoration. Pretty straightforward, just assisting in the recovery of an ecosystem degraded, damaged, or destroyed, something that we have plenty of in New Jersey. And that's what we'll take a look at. Just a quick look. It's a fascinating map, 1905. This rail yard, or rail track right here, that's the track that runs just east of the New Jersey Turnpike. So that whole big area of wetland, just below the word Newark, that's the airport. Let's look at some other places. Look up by Secaucus in the Meadowlands, where it's all wetland. Now we just kind of transfer to what it is now. So, we can go back, and on that old map, they call this the Upper Bay. Well, it doesn't look much like a bay now because we built all of this. Newark Bay, it went back to the airport. So that's probably the most urban example we have, but it does show how things have changed in 100 years. Something closer to home. Lower Raritan. Now, especially look from just below the end of Raritan, right around Red Root Creek. That's Raritan Center. And just to point things out, and I wish I had a marker, but just to the left of Raritan Center, there's a landfill. That's too much technology. And then over here, this little white spot, that's Edgeboro landfill. Just above it is another landfill. So we've been very good at modifying resources. But why do we need restoration? What it really gets to is trying to restore the functions and values of those systems that we've so wonderfully destroyed or disturbed or degraded in the past. But to really tie in what Chris was saying, one of the other issues that's still ongoing is we still haven't really embraced what those functions and values mean on a more societal level. And in many ways, we continue to degrade them or degrade them further. And a lot of it has to do with poor stormwater management. So what are the impacts? We want to look at things on a watershed scale now. We tend to be very bad at understanding the impacts of a lot of our actions. We tend to look at stormwater management, or have in the past, as a property, or as some unit, that as soon as that water leaves the property, we don't have to worry about it. That's essentially what most plans have done for years. Now, there is an effect of all that water once it leaves the property. And one of the things it's done with poor volume control, thank you, is it created a lot of channel instability. When there's a lot of channel instability, it can jeopardize infrastructure, degrade water quality. If you think about all those eroding stream banks, that adds to the suspended solid load. Actually, a study we're working on Manalapan Creek, 50% of the TSS load is due to in-stream erosion. Here's a great example. This is Walnut Creek, or Walnut Brook, just outside of Flemington. This stream moved 23 feet in the course of us developing the plans. So by the time we actually had to implement the project, the stream wasn't in the same location. Plus, it's a 1,200-acre drainage area that's intermittent. It shouldn't be an intermittent stream with that size drainage. And like right now, there's no flow.
Well, maybe right now.
Today's like yesterday.
We checked today, none of the piezometers have any water. We'll go back to green infrastructure. Sorry. Chris had brought it up before, more from a stormwater perspective, and using natural systems to treat stormwater. The other element of that is, and from EPA's perspective, is let's take a closer look at our natural systems to see which ones aren't functioning as well as they could, to get them to function better, to essentially enhance existing functions. And as I said before, a lot of our systems are degraded. And one of the issues with stream erosion is streams can downcut, they can become separated from their floodplain. So by reconnecting streams to their floodplain can mean a lot to water quality and flood management, as well as habitat. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but these are the goals. These are the functions that we're trying to embrace and to restore to degraded systems or to enhance those functions. And some of the simple ones, and nutrient transformation is a big one. So if we have a stream that's downcut and separated or disconnected from its floodplain, means the water table is lower. Means that anaerobic zone we always find in wetlands or wetter riparian zones can be disconnected or separated from the roots. That reduces our ability to transform nutrients. All these things are actually interconnected. So what can we do? What I want to do now is just go through some examples of projects that can be done. A lot of different funding sources, including private sector. It's an example of a site in Woodbridge. It was a mitigation site and a mitigation bank. That's what it started as. It was a large rail yard by the Reading Railroad as their eastern terminus for their coal facility and coal operations. Look at the lovely soil. All the excess coal kind of fell off the cars for years. Everything was black. Well, that's what it is today, 4 years later. That example was our client needed fill for his site. All the wetlands were partially filled. So he used the wetlands that were partially filled as a fill source for his site to restore tidal flow to the rest of the site. Simple. Just finding creative matches that the private sector can help drive a lot of these restoration projects. And this reforestation project was where some of the excess material was placed and then capped and then reforested. And the beauty for that client, as a bank, each credit is worth $550,000. So it cost $1.2 million to build. It's worth 4.7. So the private sector, that is a driver for doing very green projects. Somerset County Wetland Mitigation Bank, which the state now calls a consolidated bank because they don't want it to be competitive with the private sector. This site is a bank. It was about a 9-acre floodplain enhancement project done as a private bank for Somerset County infrastructure projects. Other counties can do the same. That's what it started out as. That's what it is last year. It went from a farm field to 165 species of just plants. I have no idea how many birds are actually there at this point. And it's designed to flood on a 3-month event. So the design really focused on trying to get water out of the stream as an overall flood enhancement project. Essentially what it does is pay for some of our sins of